Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network. Be sure to like this video if you're joining us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, maybe leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. I am Jesse Friedman, alongside Jack Sommers, back here with another live post-game edition of the show. And Jack, the Diamondbacks offense seems to have picked up some steam here in the past couple of days since our last episode. Familiar scene for most of this game. Eduardo Rodriguez was good, but the offense was not backing him up until the later innings, Jack. And when all is said and done, Diamondbacks put 7 up on the board. They win this game 7-1, and they complete a series win over the New York Mets.
Crow never tasted so good. In our last episode, I was out there saying the bottom half of the lineup's a black hole, and there aren't good hitters down there. And I've been humbled once again. The 6, 7, 8, and 9 hitters yesterday and today combined, if you include Gabby's 2 pinch hit doubles for 10 hits, and then Fernandez filling in the 5th spot had 2 hits and an RBI ground out today. So, yes, the offense has come alive. And, of course, yesterday Corbin was the big star. But, today Gabby's work off the bench and all of the work done in that 7th inning at the bottom of the lineup really was key to making this happen. Same thing in yesterday's win. So, mea culpa.
There you go. Eduardo Rodriguez was a huge story in this game. We'll talk about him more later in the episode for sure. Big reason why the Diamondbacks were able to stay in this game as long as they did. But yeah, the offense in that 7th inning, Jack, that's the probably the biggest storyline in this one. Nolan McLean eventually, D-backs eventually got him out of the game. He was outstanding, looked dominant throughout most of this one. But in the 7th inning, Geraldo Perdomo draws a leadoff walk. Adrian Del Castillo follows that up with a strikeout, but then Jose Fernandez hits a single. You've got 2 on, 1 out. And at that point, Carlos Mendoza mercifully removes Nolan McLean from the game. The Diamondbacks get into the Mets bullpen. It was Luke Weaver, who did not have a good game when all was said and done. Gabriel Moreno comes up, pinch hits for James McCann in that spot, 2 on, 1 out. He strokes an RBI double to right field. Alec Thomas follows that up with a fielder's choice grounder. Mark Vientos tried to throw home Jose Fernandez. Very nice slide, able to get in safely. The Mets don't record an out at all on that play. Gabriel Moreno takes 3rd on that play as well. Tim Tawa hits a sac fly, makes it 3-1 D-backs. And then Jorge Barosa sort of puts the icing on the cake in that inning. D-backs put up a 4 spot. They get a 4-1 lead. And then they were able to pad that in the 8th inning, add a few more runs, winning this game 7-1 when all was said and done. Jack, as you were talking about earlier, just a lot of different guys, the top and the bottom of this lineup contributing to what was really a pretty good day at the end of this one for the D-backs offense.
Well, and of course, it all still goes back to Erod to keep them in this game and give them a chance to crack it open. But yeah, I mean, they kept working it. Boy, Nolan McLean's a good pitcher.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just got so much movement on his pitches, but he throws strikes. Like, usually you see guys have that much movement. They generally don't throw that many strikes, but he's in and around that zone so much with all that movement. And they hung in there. I mean, obviously they had some tough at-bats, but boy, that 7th inning really, just a lot of, honestly, personal satisfaction to see Jorge Barosa start to have a few good things happen for him. He's such a neat guy and a very nice person. And, so you like to see good things happen to good people. And, he catches a lot of crap because he hasn't hit it all prior to this year. It's not like he's setting the world on fire batting .217, but he's got a .728 OPS. All his hits are extra base hits. And, he's playing well in other aspects of the game. So great to see him come up with the RBI triple there as well.
Well, I know you got somebody over on Reddit, Jack, who threw this comment out there in reaction to this show, just saying, hopefully you guys just talk about how good Jose Fernandez is for an hour. And maybe we won't do that for the entire episode, Jack, but we will do that for at least a portion of this episode for sure. Jose Fernandez wasn't the whole story for the D-backs offensively in this one, but he did have their only hit in this game for quite a while against Nolan McLean. Double, sort of a jam shot double that he was able to keep fair down the left field line. And then, as I mentioned earlier, he hit that single in the seventh inning, helped the D-backs start that rally, and then a really nice slide into home plate. Of course, we've talked about the sprint speed being in the elite range, and defensively looked pretty good at third base today. I think this is the first time that we've seen Torrey start Jose Fernandez over Nolan Arenado over at third base. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, Jack. I want to say that's the case. At the very least, we haven't seen a whole lot of Jose Fernandez at third base up to this point in the majors, and he looked pretty good over there defensively. So you talk about what he's doing offensively with the bat, what he's doing on the base paths, and then on the defensive side of the ball, things looking pretty clean there as well. There's a reason that everyone is clamoring for Jose Fernandez to get in the lineup every day. And as we said in our last episode, Jack, I mean, I don't think you or I have any disagreements there. I mean, Jose Fernandez should be playing about as much as anyone else. And we'll see if Torey Lovullo kind of adjusts and starts to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of feel it coming. You know, he has been playing a little bit more. Right now, I think, though, just he's got to play 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7 games. He also had an RBI ground out in this game. Like you said, he played good defense. You know, he had the 2 hits. And he just seems to make things happen.
Yeah.
And he's got the upside. You know, and I don't have all the answers here. Look, the D-backs are in a tough spot. Nobody should have any illusions. It's not like Torrey can just turn around and say, okay, Nolan Arenado, you're playing once a week. He can't do that, not without the buy-in of his GM and his front office. I'm not saying that they're making the lineup, but, you know, you don't bench a guy like Nolan Arenado without it being a group discussion. It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
So we need to kind of be realistic about this. But, you know, look, between third base and first base and DH, you know, he's got to play. I think Perdomo probably could use a day off coming up here, you know, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Jose get a game in at shortstop. You know, I would be surprised if between now and Sunday he doesn't play at least one game at shortstop as well. So, you know, look, we're all clamoring for more Jose Fernandez. I'm still of a mind that, you know, regression is a harsh mistress, and we're going to see, you know, a tough run of at-bats and results from him at some point. But the only way to get to his full potential is to let him play. And at this point, you're not losing anything by letting him play. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue with the results up to this point in the season. AZ Devil Dog corrects me in the chat. His debut was at third base. So this was his second game at third base. But yeah, I know at first base, there have been maybe a couple plays that haven't gone his way, but by and large, Jose Fernandez seems to be able to hold his own at just about any defensive position in the infield. And that's an asset for the D-backs as they try to find ways to get him in the lineup more consistently. The fact that he can play all those different positions, you figure that should make this possible. I think we should also give Ildemaro Vargas a shout out here, Jack. Entering today, Ildemaro Vargas was hitting, I believe it is 476. If I'm not getting that wrong.
I think the opening lineup he was hitting maybe I thought he was hitting 500 to start the game. Maybe it was 400. It was ridiculous. Whatever it was.
It was ridiculous. And you know, you see a guy hitting almost 500, or maybe it was 500, 12, 13 games into the season. And the initial thought is like, okay, you know, sure, it's small sample size. Some balls have probably just dropped in, you know, a little bit of good luck, and there you go. But entering today, Jack, Ildemaro Vargas had an expected batting average of 478, an expected slugging percentage of 685. So, you know, there's a reason we talk about how those numbers are not necessarily predictive moving forward. We're not here to say that Ildemaro is going to maintain this the whole season. But I mean, with Corbin Carroll out, and we'll talk more about his injury later in the show, but with Corbin Carroll on the shelf, it was Ildemaro Vargas that Torrey elevates and has hitting second in the lineup. And I know it was just one hit for him in this game, but it was a double. He also walked in this one as well. He just continues to be a really big part of this offense. And by the way, like Jose Fernandez, he also can play a variety of positions, and he's looked pretty good on that side of the ball as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, ride the hot hand, right? I mean, right now you're just trying to stay afloat. Amazing that they're 7-6 right now. And not only while you're waiting for injured guys to come back, but Cattell was 0 for 5 today. The chase issue just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
He came into today with a 35% chase rate. That was in the lower 20 percentile. And he chased a bunch more today. He's hitting 189 with a 529 OPS. So, sure, once Cattell gets on track and, Corbin gets back in the lineup and, maybe you get Lourdes back. But for now, I mean, you got to play Vargas and you got to play Fernandez because those are the guys getting it done. They got to play.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty much that simple. Eduardo Rodriguez, Jack, had a really, really big part to play in this game as well, even though the final score made this one look lopsided. I don't know if the D-backs are able to build the seventh inning that they did unless, they're firmly right in the middle of that game. Maybe it changes Carlos Mendoza's strategy as well. So we're going to talk about Erod for a good while, give him his props. Before we do that, we do want to ask one more time. We would really appreciate it if you would drop a like on this video, subscribe to our channel. If you're joining us here on YouTube, hit the bell icon for notifications so you never miss an episode. And shout out to all of you who are joining us here live in the chat. We love seeing all of the comments flowing through. We really, really appreciate all of you being here. If you're joining us on an audio-only platform after the fact, it also really helps us out if you would leave us a 5-star review. So thank you in advance for doing all those things. Hit the like button once again as well. That really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. So thank you all once again for supporting us. We really, really appreciate that. Well, Jack,
I also
go
want
ahead.
to shout out to our friends over at AZ Snake Pit. My former boss over there, Jim McLennan, he's the one that helped me kickstart the journalism portion of my career. And so I always enjoy going back there and hanging out and chatting with the folks there. One of the members there, AZ Nail Gal 520, I want to give a special shout out there. Appreciate the support you give us. It was mentioned in the chat that she always listens to us on the podcast and gives us 5-star reviews. And that really does help us so much. So just want to say thank you to everybody here in the chat, folks that listen to us in all the different platforms. We feel it, we hear it, and it means everything to us. Believe me, we're not doing this for the money. We're doing it for fun for you guys. And so just thank you all for your support.
100%. Well said. Eduardo Rodriguez, Jack, I mean, just a really solid game from him. 6 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. I thought there were a couple of big moments that stood out to me in the bottom of the 3rd inning. Eduardo allowed a Bo Bichette single and a Luis Robert Jr. walk with 2 outs. So 2 on, 2 out. Ketel Marte made a really nice snag on a line drive off the bat of Mark Vientos at that point. Kept it a 1-0 game there in the bottom of the 3rd. In the bottom of the 5th, maybe an even bigger moment. Tyrone Taylor leads off that inning with a double. Francisco Lindor grounds out, moves him over to 3rd base. Runner at 3rd, 1 out. Bo Bichette coming up. You're figuring, all right, there's probably at least 1 run on the board for the Mets. Bo Bichette draws a walk against Erod, so now you've got runners at the corners, 1 out. And then Erod comes back. And after allowing a home run to Luis Robert in the 1st inning, he strikes out Luis Robert Jr. on 3 pitches. Pretty impressive. Just froze him on a fastball at the knees. And then, maybe even more impressively, he got Mark Vientos on a 3-2 pitch. It was an extended at bat. He was able to throw a changeup, lower outside corner, perfectly placed pitch, gets Mark Vientos to roll over the top. And that was the end of the inning. Erod able to work out of that 5th without any damage done. And not only that, Jack, but somewhat surprisingly, Torey Lovullo put Erod back out there for the 6th. He was at 91 pitches, but Torey sends him back out for the 6th. And Erod rewarded Torey for doing that. It was a nice, easy 1-2-3 inning on 11 pitches. And Erod able to complete 6 innings. We've talked about the importance of starters going deep into games with the D-backs right in the middle of this 9-game road trip. So not only Erod keeping runs off the board, Jack, but also his ability to complete 6 innings, really big for the D-backs here in this one.
Yeah, it was massive. I mean, that was a 28-pitch inning, that 5th inning. And I thought he was done, or at most he might come out for another hitter. Sure. So for him to be able to come back out and throw an 11-pitch inning, and finished six. So Erod, he's the first guy to get over 100 pitches for the D-backs this year. Nobody else has done that. He's got two quality starts. Zach Gallen has the only other quality start on the team. Interesting enough, though, the D-backs actually came into today, I think, ranked 11th for most pitches by a starting pitcher on average. The average starting pitches by a
Huh.
starting pitcher. They came into the day ranked 11th in MLB, and I was a little surprised to see that. We even talked about how they seem to be going short, but the fact is that they've been consistently getting to that 80, 85, and more because they've been pretty darn good, the rotation, for the most
Right.
part. So that has a lot to do with it. But anyway, for Erod to go back out, I was lamenting in that AZ Snake Pit chat about, I was really hoping for a clean inning from Erod. How ironic that we finally got a clean inning in the sixth inning. But that
Yeah.
was everything. Like that set the tone for it. Is like, okay, you could just feel the momentum change when he pitched that up three down, sixth inning. It's like, okay, time for the bats to get going, and they sure did. I mean, that's exactly when they turned it on. And we kind of poo-poo sometimes the chemistry and synergy, but we shouldn't. It meant something. I'm sure it meant a lot inside that dugout at that moment, and it had a lot to do with them being energized the way they were.
Yeah, momentum is fake, Jack. Don't ever forget that. I don't think any of us actually believe that. 100%. That was a huge push moment for the Diamondbacks there in the bottom of the sixth, and they very much followed that up with a big showing offensively in the top half of that seventh inning. Digging a little closer here on a little deeper on Erod, Jack. Once again, the changeup was sort of the star of the show. He threw that more than any other pitch. 32% usage in this game. He had 3 whiffs on the changeup, so nothing too crazy on that front. But once again, was able to generate a lot of weak contact on that pitch. I know there were a few more hard hit balls in this game for the Mets for sure than what we've seen on that pitch in Erod's other couple of starts. But still a really good day for him in large part because of that changeup. The four seam fastball also I think looked probably as good as we've seen it this year. He had 3 called strikes, 5 whiffs on the four seamer. Actually, more whiffs on the four seamer than the changeup. I mean, you could argue the four seamer was really the star of the show in this game, and also 4 balls in play on the four seam fastball. Only one of those was 95 or more off the bat. So Eduardo, Jack, we've seen him kind of move away from the four seamer in his first couple starts, but he brought it back a little bit in this game, got some swing and miss at the top of the zone, and it worked out really well for him, having both the changeup and the four seam fastball, mixing those up well, and both were effective in this game.
If I was in New York, I would probably ask him, did the cold weather conditions influence his pitch mix at all? Because I'm wondering if it might have been just a little bit easier to roll with the four seamer and cut back a little bit, on the other pitches, the cutter and the sinker. Maybe it's just easier to roll that pitch up there at that, get a better grip or whatever it is that the conditions might have influenced him. But yeah, I mean, just terrific stuff from Erod. I certainly, who had Eduardo Rodriguez being hands down the D-backs' best starter to start the year 3 times through the rotation? I don't think any of us envisioned that. We were maybe hopeful coming off the WBC that he would be able to carry this forward, but it's been really impressive. And I was looking at a lot of different things for him. I was looking at his splits, at home in April because he pitched in cold weather climates.
Yeah.
I was looking at that last night or early this morning, and he had in his career composite ERA of 3.50 in home games in April. So, he's pitched in cold weather before. He knows how to work through it. I mean, the other thing that's really impressive, I mean, if you look at his career velocity trajectory game by game, you do that by over at Fangraphs. They got some really cool ways to do the charts. Everyone uses Savant all the time, but Fangraphs has some pretty cool charts too and good visualizations. And it's just, you just see that steady drop 95, 94, 93, 92, 91. And yet he's still, able to be somewhat effective here. So, hopefully he's able to continue this method of mixing all his pitches in. That's been the key, mixing them all up. He's obviously got to be pretty fine with his command and all of that. And that can come and go maybe for some guys. But what a terrific start for Eduardo Rodriguez. All the props in the world, losing all that weight really helped. Probably needs to work on his pitcher fielding practice a little bit more, especially getting off the mound and getting over the first base. He had another
Yeah.
one of those incidents today. Didn't it cost him 7 pitches, but it didn't matter. Didn't cost any runs, and he went 6 innings. So all's well that ends well on that front.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It wasn't a great, I think it was the bottom of the second inning. Brett Beatty just hit a slow roller to Ildemaro Vargas. And yeah, it looked like a pretty routine play, and Erod just didn't get over there. There was no way for Ildemaro to do it all himself. So not a great look for Erod on that particular play, but by and large, big game for him. And as you said, just a really impressive start to the season. And I think as I just kind of zoom out here, Jack, and think about what we've seen from this team in the first 13 games, I'm not ready to call this starting rotation one of the best in baseball. I know the staff ERA is quite good. They were ninth with a 3.19 last I checked a couple days ago. That's probably only gotten better after Ryne Nelson had a good game yesterday and Eduardo did what he did today. I think there's still we need to see more from this group. The underlying numbers still don't fully support what they've been able to do. But at the very least, Jack, it is easy to talk myself into this rotation being better than it was a year ago, and maybe significantly better. I mean, with Eduardo turning things around to the extent that he has, no, he's not going to have a 0.5 ERA for the whole season, but he's had an ERA over 5 the past couple years for the D-backs. Even if he could just get back to the mid upper 3 range, the type of pitcher he was in seasons before joining the Diamondbacks, I mean, that would be huge. And Zach Gallen looking a little better, that feels promising. Michael Soroka looking as good as he's looked. Obviously, Brandon Pfaadt still a bit of a question mark there. But on the whole, Jack, this starting rotation is maybe the biggest reason that the Diamondbacks are 7-6 through 13 games, despite the fact that they've played still a pretty difficult schedule to open the season.
Yeah, they have a 2.88 starters ERA right now, which is the 6th best in the National League.
Wow.
As Jesse pointed out, when we wake up tomorrow morning and we look up the FIP and the XFIP and the XERA, those are all going to still be about a run higher than the ERA. But it's, bottom line is they're doing a pretty good job. Even if you tack on a run, if all of those peripheral metrics end up at, well under 4 for the year, that's a total win. And let's not forget the bullpen, right? We actually had a request from, I think, Quigley, is it in the chat? Michael Quigley. Let's not forget about Taylor Rashi. I mean, he was pretty impressive for 2 innings.
He was.
That was, his slider is getting swing and miss. There was a pretty funny moment, when he snuck in a 0-2 fastball right down the middle. That was probably the last thing the hitter was looking for, and he got away with it. And, as he was kind of walking off, he kind of looked over. I guess he looked like he was looking towards third base or maybe towards the dugout. I'm not sure. But he gave her kind of a sheepish smile, like got away with one there. But Rashi just seems to be able to get outs quite a lot, despite less than impressive surface stuff. And we're going to have to take a little closer look at what's going on under the hood there. I haven't really done a deep dive on him as far as what his stuff is. Jesse, maybe you already have a little deeper than I. What's making him so effective? I mean, obviously the slider is really working, but what is it about that slider that makes it so effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to maybe dive a little bit deeper there. At first glance, the movement numbers on the slider today weren't off the charts different than what they were a season ago. It looks like he had 1 more inch of drop on the slider on average today compared to a season ago, but generally 1 inch is not enough to cause, enormous changes. But the command was certainly there. He was putting that pitch in a great location time and time again, generated 5 whiffs on the slider, 2 whiffs on the 4-seam, 2 more whiffs on the splitter. So yeah, we definitely should give Taylor Rashi a shout out after this one. 9 swings and misses on 21 pitches. That is pretty outrageous level stuff. Saved some other arms out in that D-backs bullpen. Only 21 pitches from him to get through those 2 innings. And really, the bullpen, Jack, over the course of this whole series was pretty good for the Diamondbacks. We have the numbers on the screen here. 10 2/3 innings from the bullpen in the series, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. We saw Andrew Hoffman give up 1 run yesterday, which didn't wind up meaning a whole lot in that game. And then, of course, there were the 2 runs in the Tuesday game. Paul Sewald gives up the walk-off winner to Ronnie Mauricio in the 10th inning. But as we said at the end of that game, like that game was really more on the offense than it was the bullpen. The bullpen gave up 1 earned run in that game, and I think it was 4 1/3 or 4 2/3 innings. So you really can't fault the bullpen for a game like that. That was really more on the offense. And again, I don't know if I'm here to say the D-backs bullpen is one of the best in baseball, Jack, but at the very least, that group has really stabilized here over the last week or so.
Yeah, I mean, of the 28 earned runs the bullpen has given up, 5 came from James McCann and 6 came from Joe Ross, who was DFA'd and then came back and was busy last night, giving up a bunch more runs for the Reno Aces. I don't think there's a good case to put him back on the major league roster, but the D-backs have him on the Reno Aces roster. I just thought I'd throw that out there. But 11 of them, 6 from Ross, 5 from McCann, 11 of the 28 earned runs came from those 2. So, the bullpen, if you kind of subtract those 2, it's been pretty decent. It hasn't been terrible, other than a few, obvious hiccups and, with blown saves. But right now they have a 5.40 bullpen ERA that ranks 24th. And I've said this before, like if you go through every team and take out their worst reliever, there's relative improvement for every, like people go, well, if you just take out McCann, but you can go to more than half the teams in the league and they have somebody back there that, gave up 4, 5, 6 runs in an inning in the third total so far this year. I mean, everyone, half the teams in the league have a guy like that. So, if you're going to do that for the D-backs, you got to do it for everybody. But if you allow them to remove the worst 2, then they probably improve more than most.
Yeah, I mean, not every team has had a position player give up 5 runs, right? So maybe you could argue you really can eliminate the 5 runs from James McCann. I'm sure there are a couple of other teams that have had a position player pitch early on in the season, but yeah, the Diamondbacks bullpen, we're not here saying it's going to be fantastic the rest of the way, but Juan Murillo has been pretty good in the later innings. Ryan Thompson, there's been more good than bad there. Jonathan Loaizaga, I know the last couple outings haven't been great. His stuff has still looked decent overall. And Paul Sewald has had a couple of rough games when the score's been tied, but he's 3 for 3 in save opportunities, which I think is at least a reasonable start for him. So pretty decent stuff from the D-backs bullpen here lately. We also wanted to circle back to Ryne Nelson, who was a big part of the D-backs winning their Wednesday game against the Mets. 5 2/3 innings, Jack, 1 run, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Really nice bounce back from Nelson after a couple of rough ones to start the season. And as we discussed in our last episode, like we still don't totally know what D-backs are planning to do when Merrill Kelly comes back from injury. And feel pretty confident Ryne Nelson is not going to be the odd man out after what he did yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this almost every show. I mean, the one thing we can say is we pretty much know that Merrill's on track to come back on the second game of the Orioles series. I believe that's the 14th. So that's where he'll slot in. Nelson should start on that Monday game. And so I guess if they slot Merrill in at that point, then they push Erod back a game. And that's, and he pitches a series finale against the Orioles. And then they figure out what they're going to do beyond that. They got an off day. And so, that somebody's going to, it's either going to be Soroka or Fott. And as you've said often, that you believe it's going to be Soroka, and there's a pretty strong case for that. So we'll see what happens. Merrill's still got to get through. I guess he pitched today. So maybe I'm not in New York, so we'll have to look for a report from our colleagues, Steve or Nick. I'm sure that they'll have asked Tori about that, and I'll look up and see what he had to say about Merrill's work today.
Yeah, be interesting to see what the D-backs do there here. Just a few more days to make that decision. Offense, or I guess one other note on Nelson, Jack. You mentioned earlier with the cold weather. Does that change your pitch arsenal at all? Ryne Nelson did say after his start that with it being as cold as it was just easier to throw fastballs than it was to throw breaking pitches, and he sure did that. He threw 76% four seam fastballs in that game. And certainly we're used to seeing Ryne Nelson really stand by his four seamer. But that was another level, Jack. He just kind of went out there and said, here it is, hit it. And for the most part, the Mets hitters were not able to do that. It was a really, really nice game for him.
Yeah. I mean, look, Ryan really needed to bounce back in a big way. I mean, he was struggling. He wasn't throwing strikes. He wasn't landing any breaking pitches or many breaking pitches for called strikes. It's kind of ironic that, he wrote I don't know, it was 75% fastballs at the end of the day, something like that.
Yeah,
But good enough.
76. Yeah.
It's good enough. I mean, he can do that. He can have games like that. And he really came very close to completing 6 innings. He looked a little leaky. A lot of people were wondering why he came out after just 86 pitches with 2 outs in the fifth. But, the inning before and that inning, the fifth and the sixth inning, he did not look totally on his game. It looked like kind of, his command had dropped a little bit. His velocity had dropped a little bit. And so I don't think Torrey did the wrong thing. It worked out well. 3 pitches and Ryan Thompson got him out of that inning, and then the bullpen did their job the rest of the way. So all's well that ends well there as well. We'll just have to see. I mean, Ryne Nelson clearly has still got work to do to become a well-rounded pitcher. But on nights like last night, I'll take 5 2/3 with the work that he put in with that fastball.
Yesterday's game sort of the reverse storyline of today's, where you get a pretty good starting pitching performance, but the offense actually comes all on the front end. D-backs put up 5 runs on the board in the first 2 innings yesterday against the Mets. David Peterson had a bit of a rough outing for New York, and Corbin Carroll was right in the middle of all the offense in the game yesterday. Jack, he finishes the series 4 for 10, 2 doubles, a triple. All 3 of those extra base hits came in the game yesterday. Unfortunately, what we heard after the game a little bit and then more today is that Carroll actually suffered a bit of a hip injury while rounding second base. Going from second base to third base is where he said he felt it on that triple that happened toward the end of the game. So that's why Corbin Carroll did not start this one for the D-backs. To their credit, the team was still able to go out and score 7 runs even without him. But certainly, Jack, this is not a player that you want to see miss any time. He has been far and away the Diamondbacks' most consistent hitter here in 2026, and doesn't sound too concerning. They're not planning to send him for imaging, at least as of right now. So it sounds like this could just be a few days, and then Corbin Carroll gets back in the lineup soon.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is they didn't need to do any imaging, right? So they don't seem too worried about it. Now, that's, doesn't really mean a whole lot if he's not ready to go tomorrow. Nick Pecora reported Torey Lovullo's comment, said he was running around out there like a madman and it just got tight. Instead of throwing him back out there and asking his body to do something that might cause some more damage, we decided to get him off his feet. So that makes sense to me. It worked, like you said, it worked out fine. If all he needed was, an extra day and some treatment, then wonderful. If he starts missing 2, 3, 4 games, or he comes back and then, pulls a muscle, I mean, then I'm going to be a little concerned about it. Hip flexor, groin could be either one of those, right? Those areas are all pretty close. So you just really, you got to, I mean, his whole, so much of his game revolves around his legs. So anything to do with Corbin Carroll's legs or lower half, it raises a red flag for me. And I'm applaud the team for being extra cautious. Hopefully that's what they were being, and that it's not worse than they're letting on. Hopefully it is really, really very mild, and it's cold, let's give him a break. It's going to be 65 degrees in Philly. Let him go there.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's what it is. One other injury note. Yesterday, Alex D'Agostino and I reported exclusively Demetrio Crisantes suffered a hamstring strain. He's a number 5 prospect. in the organization, and a tough break for the guy. I mean, last year he had to have shoulder surgery and he missed most of the season. And now he's going to be out until at least the end of May, perhaps even into June, with a pretty significant hamstring strain if it's out over 2 months. So
Yeah.
tough break for Demetrio Crisantes.
Yeah, that was my pick for Diamondbacks minor league player of the year. So hopefully it doesn't hold him out for too long. Of course, Crisantes also had the big shoulder injury a season ago, missed about 4 months of last year. So he's really been deterred by injury here the past couple of seasons. Hopefully he's able to get back in there before too long. Other notes here: Ildemaro Vargas, we mentioned him earlier. He goes 5 for 13 in this series with a double and a walk. Just continues to be a guy that you can plug in at pretty much any position, and the quality of the at bat has been awesome. And at least so far, the quality of contact has been really, really great for him as well. Jack, also nice to see Gabby Moreno get going in this series. He finishes the series 4 for 9 with 3 doubles and 3 runs batted in. Of course, 2 of those doubles came in the latter innings of this game when he replaced James McCann. Really nice to see him kind of get the bat going. Of course, he is a really big part of this offense as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, Gabriel Moreno is going to have to actually step up and be an even bigger part, considering some of the problems that we're having with Cattell and Perdomo.
Yeah.
So, Moreno needs to really step forward and be that guy from behind the plate, as a top hitting catcher. He's got to be one of the top 2, 3, 4 hitting catchers in the league this year, hopefully, to kind of make up for some of the other shortfalls or regression to the mean or whatever else we might be looking at here. So if he can continue to do this, that would be fabulous for them.
You mentioned Geraldo Perdomo, Jack. I guess we'll hit on him just for a second. It's been a really slow start. We have seen his walks tick up here recently. He's the guy who drew the walk to start that 7th inning rally. So in typical Geraldo Perdomo fashion, he's still finding ways to get on base from time to time, but it hasn't been nearly as consistent as it was a season ago. And just kind of a bizarre run for him overall, Jack. I mean, he is in the middle right now of a run of, I want to say it's 47. I'm double checking here. I think it is 47 consecutive plate appearances without a strikeout. So Geraldo Perdomo is not striking out at all. I believe that is the longest active streak in Major League Baseball. He hasn't struck out since March 27th in the 3rd inning, if memory serves. So it's not like he's going out there and striking out, Jack. He's actually striking out less than he did a season ago. The problem is that even though he's putting the ball in play over and over and over again, he just is not doing anything with it. And of course, this was an issue for Perdomo early in his career, where he also didn't strike out all that much, but the quality of contact was just so poor that it often didn't translate into base hits. And that's pretty much the version of him that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, right now what we're looking at is 65, 66, bat speed. And that's really slow. Like that's back to where he was, his rookie season. And so he had increased. It's not bat speed was never going to be his game. He'd increased to 68, 69 last year, which is still well below average. Large exit velocities were never going to be his thing. But hitting the ball in the sweet spot frequently, getting the meatiest part of the barrel on the ball and getting the max amount of exit velocity he could get for his swings and hitting the ball in the right trajectories in the right spot. That was his game. But it seems like the swing is degraded this year. Visually, it doesn't look the same. And I'm not, quite sure why. When they come back from the road trip, if things haven't changed, he's one of the topics I plan to try to sit down with Joe Mather and discuss and see if he can give me a clue as to what's going on with his swing. I don't really know. Look, I'm not a hitting coach, so I need to ask the pro. But Joe's pretty good. I mean, he'll identify very openly and honestly, usually, exactly what the problem is and what he's trying to get him to do. So hopefully I can have a productive conversation with him during the next homestand.
At the very least, the at-bats have looked better here recently. And as I said, he's not striking out. So maybe it's only a matter of time for Jerry to get things going. The bat speed is definitely something to continue to monitor. We're early in the season, but bat speed is something that does stabilize fairly early on. So the fact that he's a couple ticks shy from where he was a season ago is noteworthy for sure. Turning
Just,
the yeah,
back
yeah,
to
go ahead.
real quick. So, last year his squared up rate was 32.3%. That was in the 92nd percentile, right? So he squares up the baseball. His launch angle sweet spot was 36.2. That was in the 70th percentile. Okay, so that's how Perdomo did what he did last year, despite a low hard hit rate. Now the squared up rate is still there, but the launch angle sweet spot is somewhat degraded here in 26. And like I said, the bat speed and the average exit velo are just crashing down. So I don't really know the answers here for him. We'll just have to see what Joe says.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be looking forward to hearing that conversation or hearing about that conversation for sure. Turning the page here, Jack. Diamondbacks now head to Philadelphia. Apparently, they are taking a bus from Queens down to Philly, where they will take on the Philadelphia Phillies this weekend for a 3-game series. We've got the pitching matchups here. It's Michael Soroka against Jesus Luzardo on Friday, Brandon Pfaadt and Taijuan Walker on Saturday, and then Zach Gallen against rookie righty Andrew Painter on Sunday. The Phillies, Jack, are 6-6 to start the season. The offense hasn't really gotten going to this point. Bryce Harper, as you can see here, has a 749 OPS. Kyle Schwarber's had an okay start. He's hitting only 195, but in typical Kyle Schwarber fashion, he still has managed to have an 852 OPS with all the walks and all the slug. Worth noting, Jack, that on the pitching side of things, the Phillies have a 4.21 ERA this season, but their underlying numbers as a team are quite good. They have a 2.91 FIP as a team, a 2.91 xFIP as a team. So this is a team that has not pitched all that well to start the season, at least from a result standpoint. But you look at the strikeout rates and the walk rates and home runs and all the other stuff, I think it's probably only a matter of time before things turn around for the Phillies pitching staff.
Yeah, I mean, the same could be said for their offense. They're clearly got a better offense than this, but their offense was essentially the same as the Diamondbacks coming in to tonight. Now, the Phillies did not play tonight, but the Phillies have an 84 team OPS plus and a 658 OPS. Coming into tonight, the D-backs had an 83 OPS plus and a 651 OPS. Phillies had scored 42 runs, the D-backs had scored 45. So essentially the same offense. Phillies a little bit higher OBP and the D-backs a little bit higher slug. So now the D-backs offense went off for 7 runs tonight. They got a bunch of hits in the last couple innings. So their numbers are going to improve somewhat. Hopefully this isn't the weekend where the Phillies bats wake up. We don't want to see that.
Yeah, Trey Turner is not off to a great start. I think he has a 660 OPS, something in that range, and you feel like that's only going to continue for so long. So D-backs' difficult schedule continues. Even if the Phillies are 6-6, they are widely considered to be a postseason team this season. So another really difficult opponent, and of course, in one of the more challenging environments to play in the sport out at Citizens Bank Park. So another big test for the Diamondbacks this weekend. Did you have another note on the series you wanted to add?
Well, just heading into this, I mean, the strength of schedule. Jesse, you and I talked about this beforehand. Everyone knows that the D-backs came in the month of April into the first week of May, hellacious schedule, all these playoff or expected to be playoff teams. But looking at Fangraphs 2026 projections, they're rating the D-backs as having the second easiest strength of schedule from here on out in the National League. The only team that's listed tougher is the Dodgers. So that's pretty interesting. Then part of that has to do with maybe some of the slow starts from some of the good teams that are expected to be better than they have been so far. But this is all based on projections. So regardless of what everyone was saying about how bad the schedule was, fact is the D-backs, according to Fangraphs, their projected strength of schedule the rest of the way is actually easier than most teams. Now, the difference isn't great. Dodgers at 491 have the easiest strength of schedule. D-backs at 495 expected win percentage of their opponents. The Rockies have the toughest at .506, as do the Marlins at 506, and the Nationals at 505. Now, there's no coincidence there. Obviously, these poorly projected teams don't play themselves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is fascinating. I mean, I guess it's possible the Diamondbacks have an easier schedule than most teams, given the teams they've played so far. But it also is so early in the season to be evaluating strength of schedule. It's like we don't really know which teams are good and which teams aren't. Sometimes you think you have a really difficult schedule in April, and then you look back at it a few months later and you realize, like, oh, when we were taking 2 out of 3 from all these teams we thought were good, turns out like all those teams won 72 games or something and actually weren't good when all was said and done. So I think we could safely say the Dodgers are not in that category. And, out of the Tigers and the Braves and the Mets, like at least 1 or 2 of these teams, I think is going to wind up being pretty good. But certainly there's a long way to go there. Before we get out of here, Jack, I did want to touch on what's going on down in AAA just briefly. Lou James Groover had a really, really big game for Reno yesterday. You and I were talking about that last night, as we often do. He had a grand slam for his first career AAA home run. All 5 of his batted balls in the game were hard hit. They were all at 95 or more miles per hour off the bat. And then, as Ryan Page just pointed out in the chat, Ryan Waldschmidt is 3 for 3 in the game for Reno right now as we speak. And he is just a double shy of the cycle. He just hit his first Reno home run, his first AAA home run. He also has tripled in that game and yeah, just a double away from the cycle. So you look at the way that those 2 guys are performing down there, Jack, and it feels like we've been talking about it with Waldschmidt, of course, for a while, but maybe it applies for Lou James Groover as well, where we're not all that far away from him getting an opportunity in the big leagues.
Yeah, I'm very much convinced that Lou James Groover can hit for a decent average in OBP. Everyone wonders about how much power he'll have, but he's going to be a valuable player if he can play a decent enough first base. I don't think he's going to stick at third. It's my opinion. He's working hard at it. He's still trying, but I just don't think he's going to stick at third. If he can play good defense at first base, he actually could end up being the answer relatively soon there. Obviously, Tyler Locklear is going to get another shot in a few more weeks when he does come back. I mean, I assume he's about 3-4 weeks out still, but he was not the one placed on the 60-day IL. It was Lawler. So because of that, I think that Locklear could be back by mid-May. So, he's going to get some more opportunity. But, if they end up not having to stick Jose Fernandez at first base all the time and they end up opening up third base for him, we could see a lot of Reno aces getting a lot of playing time for this team. And I would not be surprised to see Groover actually get a fairly significant run earlier than we were expecting this year. We'll see how he does the rest of the year. And of course, Waldschmidt's your number 1 prospect. And the outfield, had a good night the last couple nights. But on paper, it's a pretty weak outfield without Corbin Carroll and without Jordan Lawler, as it turns out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there is potential here. It's interesting. There's potential for the D-backs to get a decent contribution from rookies this season. I mean, you think about what Jose Fernandez is already doing. I know you picked Andrew Hoffman as your rookie of the year for the D-backs this season. He's off to a good start out of the bullpen. And then, yeah, if Ryan Waldschmidt comes up, if Lou James Groover comes up, Tommy Troy can get an opportunity at some point. There's some other relievers maybe have an opportunity, some starting pitchers that I'm sure will get an opportunity at some point. Cole Drake is making the start tonight for Reno, putting up decent numbers so far. So, we'll continue to keep an eye on what's going on, not just in the big leagues, but what's going on down in the minors as well. And once again, shout out to all of you for being with us here in the chat. We really appreciate you. Be sure to hit that like button. Once again, it really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. We really appreciate you doing that. And as always, you can find us on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman on Twitter. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. And our show is at Snakes Territory. And of course, Jack does great written work covering the Diamondbacks over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. And yeah, hit the like button, leave us a comment if you're joining us after the fact. We always enjoy hearing from you. And Jack, any final thoughts here as we say goodbye and get ready for the D-backs to head on to Philadelphia?
D-backs are 7-6, folks. 7-6. They played the Dodgers, Tigers, Braves, and Mets, and they're 7-6. I'm impressed.
I think that is very well said. If you had told anybody, including myself, anyone involved with this baseball team, that this team was going to be 7-6 after those 13 games, considering the teams they played, I think you'd absolutely be happy with that, even if it hasn't been pretty at times along the way. Well, thank you again to all of you for being with us. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be back with another edition of Snakes Territory very soon.